Time now to delve into the Sunday papers. Here with me to review them this morning are the author and journalist Gemma Forte and the author and broadcaster Emma Wolf. So welcome back to both of you again. We've dealt with a lot of the front pages in the last hour, but you've picked out a few really interesting inside pages this time around. And Gemma, we're kicking off with this horrendous story, our lead story today, about a huge number of people who've been killed in a stampede and a crush in Seoul.
Absolutely. Sadly, I think the death toll might have risen a bit even since this piece was written. I think it might currently be up to about 151, just a huge number. And as you say, complete horror. So this was the first Halloween celebration that has been allowed in 3 years because of COVID. And so sadly, excitement turned to pure tragedy. Apparently, part of the problem might have been that a rumour was flying around social media. Obviously, everybody's got their phones, and this rumour went around like wildfire that a very popular celebrity was in a certain hotel within this area in South Korea. So many young people out on the streets. The age demographic was a lot of people in their 20s, and they all stampeded to get to where this celebrity might be. And you can see the scenes that ensued, really horrific scenes, and sadly just many people crushed, and for the obviously for the officials, absolutely harrowing. And there's going to be a huge inquest into exactly what happened, but obviously my heart just goes out to those parents, those families who are finding out today that they've lost their loved ones. So a really horrible and sad story.
Yeah, terrible tragedy that. And at Seoul, one of the first events, I think, since very strict COVID restrictions as well. As you say, that there's a fear that the death toll could rise further. 151, you're right, is the latest figure that we have. Let's move on, shall we, Emma, to a story that you've seen inside The Observer. And this is looking at the scheme to house Ukrainians. And what are The Observer saying about its potential future?
Well, I mean, this is something, Anna, that really should have been foreseen. It's been a looming, issue for several months now. Council leaders are calling for ministers to act urgently to deal with the fact that we had over 100,000 refugees came over from Ukraine in this 6 month arrangement called Homes for Ukraine, and that was, being housed with lovely, generous British families. And many of those are finding that 6 month stay is coming to an end, and many UK families cannot carry on hosting Ukrainian refugees. With the cost of living crisis, with the cost of energy, heating, food and everything, it's becoming a real problem to have to be hosting an extra person or even, small families. But then again, Ukrainian refugees over here are getting jobs, they're putting their children in schools, they're putting down roots, which is all absolutely as it should be, but where are they going to go? So there's a real crisis looming about the homelessness issue. Up to 14,000 Ukrainian refugees could be homeless by Christmas, and they simply will have nowhere to go. Now, I looked into what the government plan was. The plan apparently was that they would either be rematched with new landlords, so they would be found new homes, or that Ukrainian refugees would start renting their own homes, which, as we know, is pretty unaffordable for even people who've been here for decades. So this is I'm afraid it's not a particularly uplifting story, given Gemma's last one. And it's a real worry for these, people in desperate need who've come from a war-torn situation.
Yeah, interesting to see if there is an announcement in the days and weeks ahead about what the next steps might be. Let's move on, though, Gemma, to the Sunday Express, and focusing on the new Prime Minister and some of the challenges that lie in the immediate future.
Yes, it is a double-page spread, and this is Rishi Sunak talking about how obviously his main priority has to be steering us back to prosperity. His focus very much on the economic difficulties that the country faces. Obviously, within that, he's got division within the party to sort out, but also I think there's a lot of questions about, our public services. I think there's an awful lot of worry about the state of the NHS, about education. There was a piece in the newspaper only the other day saying that 9 out of 10 schools are genuinely worried about how they're going to sustain wages and energy bills, etc. So he has got his work cut out I think we can all sympathise with that. Who would want that job, quite frankly? But he's got it. He fought for it. He is now the man in charge. But it's been not very long, and I would say he's got to play a very complicated game of chess. I would say that he did a wrong move, perhaps reinstalling, well, I would say definitely actually, Suella Braverman, given that she'd only been sacked 5 minutes ago for security breaches. But he's clearly done that to appease factions within his party. So he has got his task cut out, and obviously it's in the country's best interest that he succeeds. But I think there's going to be increasing clamour if there are any more mess-ups or scandals for a general election.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of focus as well on November the 17th, when he will outline a lot of those plans, or his Chancellor certainly will, Jeremy Hunt. And let's move on to a story in the Mirror and a protest yesterday, Emma, which was dubbed March of the Mummies, and it's all about them pushing for... You don't like that title, do you?
Well, yeah.
That's what they call themselves,
yeah.
I think. But it was all about kind of pushing for more help with childcare.
Yeah, and I chose this because I didn't see that much media coverage of it, and it's one of those issues. Do you know what, Anna? It's one of those issues that is incredibly boring. I used to roll my eyes at this until I had a child, and then it becomes really, really relevant. And I'm afraid that's how most people feel. It's just boring. Oh, women going on about childcare, and then it becomes a real obsession and a worry. So this was a campaign. So yesterday, around 15,000 protesters took to the streets in March for the Mummy, a March of the Mummies, and this was across the UK, 11 cities across the UK, basically calling for reforms to government reforms to childcare costs. And it was organised by the campaign group Pregnant Then Screwed, which is sort of women who've basically got pregnant and then been screwed over by their employers, as they say. As I say, thousands of parents and children took part, including the Labour MP Stella Creasy, who's been quite vocal on this. And the organisers are saying it's pretty much impossible for most families to survive without 2 incomes. And as a single mother myself, I feel the burn even more. And they're saying we've created an environment which prevents many mothers from being able to work. And it's not just the cost of childcare. I think it's the inflexibility. When you're someone who gets up at 2 a.m. and goes to work, what are you meant to do? I mean, literally, what are you meant to do? There aren't nurseries open. There aren't, so it's very, very difficult. Stella Creasy says that Rishi Sunak has in the past likened maternity leave to holiday, which I think for anyone who's brought up a baby or a child, pretty much, I think it's the hardest work you will ever do. Forget work. Bringing up a child is incredibly hard work. To talk about it being a holiday is pretty ludicrous. And also with the cost of living crisis, with the stagnant economy, we need growth. And for growth, we need mothers. Well, we need parents. We need fathers too, to be able to work. So I think it's a really, really important campaign. Shame that only 15,000 people attended, but, let's hope it is on the government agenda.
And we did actually interview, talk about lack of coverage, we did actually interview the organiser yesterday of it. And March of the Mummies, I'm just wondering whether it's a Halloween kind of theme, trying to evoke Halloween, calling it March of the Mummies. Anyway, it does what it says on the tin, doesn't it? It's a lot of mothers wanting more help with childcare. Good to see you both, Emma and Gemma. Lovely to have your company. Thanks very much indeed. We'll see you again soon.